Hi everybody, I'm Kathy Kisiel and I'm from the Quality Department. So welcome to Memorial Hospital. We're glad to have you all here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our department and what we do and what quality is all about here at the hospital. But before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 39 years. Look at those eyes. Hard to believe, right? I don't look a day over 25. So. Anyway, so I've seen a lot of changes in all that time. My career has been a little different than a lot of people's. I was in the military, so I was a flight nurse overseas. I was in the Air Force. So if you hear Incirlik Air Base being mentioned, all the stuff with Turkey, I was stationed there. I've worked in pediatric clinics. Most of my direct inpatient clinical experience has been in obstetrics, which is very nice because just like here, I got to work in labor and delivery and pre and postpartum and the nursery, and it's always nice to see all of that, not just one area of it. I've been the director of education at a hospital. I have been the assistant director of nursing under the old signature stuff that we used to have, so it'd be like the assistant chief nursing officer. And 10 years before I came here, or for 10 years before I came here, I was a school nurse at a school for special needs children. So all the children had some kind of health issues. We had them with seizure disorders. They had, almost everyone has some kind of assistive device like walkers or wheelchairs or strollers. We had trachs, all different things. So it's been real interesting. So when we moved here, I was looking around and saying, what am I going to do? And they had an opening here at this hospital for a PI associate. And I thought, that is really cool. I'll be like Magnum PI or something, right? I thought that was great. Sam Spade, you know. So anyway, I didn't know what that was. And I'd been a nurse for a while, right? So I thought, what is that? So that stood for Performance Improvement Associate. And that had to do with things like quality assurance. We used to call it quality management, quality control, all those different things. So over all these years, they've had all different kinds of names. And in fact, when I actually got the job here, the job position was now called a quality analyst. So that's my official position here. So it's been very interesting. So I'd like to start off here, and I know you've been here all day long, and it's a long day for orientation, but I'm going to start you off with a quiz. So the first thing is, what is quality? Can you define that?
Quality is something that's good.
Quality is something that's good. Okay. Anything else?
So like how efficient things are.
Can be, right. And we do want it to be good, and we do want it to be efficient. Very true, very true. So I always like to say that quality is sort of like the Supreme Court's decision on pornography. I know it when I see it, even though I can't define it. So it's hard to say that, exactly what quality is. Now we have been using this definition. Quality is doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way, for the right person, having best possible results every time. We have since modified it recently, and in the lower right it says, quality at Memorial Hospital is taking the lead to be a driver of change, committing to excellence, putting our patients first, and consistently utilizing best practice for the best outcomes for our patients and organizational culture. So, we're all here because of the patient. Nobody here would have a job, there would be no need for it if we didn't have patients. And no matter what your job is, or what your position is, what you do, you impact the patient experience. Now people tell me, oh, I don't touch a patient, I don't go anywhere near a patient. But let me tell you, everything people do does impact the experience the patient has. So we do think of direct caregivers like doctors and nurses, but there's folks in lab, right? They have to interact with the patient. Medical imaging, who's our ultrasound tech? Okay, so don't you interact with the patient?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Of course you do. And so dietary, what happens there? Do they get the right meal, the right time, the right temperature? Did they not get a meal when they weren't supposed to because they're being held for a test or something? Doesn't matter. And let me tell you, the biggest impact of all comes when after the patient goes home and they get their bill. So financial services definitely impacts the patient experience, right? You've all heard that. So no matter what you do here, it impacts the patient experience. So quality is learning with, about, and from each other. We all have something to contribute, and we all contribute to that positive, good quality experience that the patient has here. So we just talked about coordinating care among multiple disciplines, right? So what happens with the dietary thing? What happens with the tests the patients have to do? If they have to be NPO, or they can't eat before their test, that sort of thing. Or they have to have certain kinds of foods or something. So that's important. Ideas and suggestions for improvement comes from everybody. You all are coming here new to this facility, and I don't know what your experience or background is, either personally or professionally, but you may have knowledge of something that somebody's done somewhere else to say, by the way, I've seen this done elsewhere, and this might be a good fit for this facility. So if you see some ideas for suggestion, bring them forward to your supervisor, and let's see what we can do about it. Okay, so I told you that when I first looked at this job, it was called PI Associate, right? In a way, I wasn't that far off. So one of the things I do is I look at charts and the documentation that goes on in the records. So I have to look at different specific measures that are laid out for us by different agencies. For example, we are accredited through the Joint Commission for the Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations, Joint Commission. So they have a list of core measures or elements we need to look at. So does CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We do accept Medicare patients here, so therefore we have to adhere to their standards. So they've come up with some core measures, and these are some of them that we look at. And under each core measure, there's different elements that we look at. So I'm going to pick on a couple of these. I like immunizations because that's a really different one, because we only do that for 6 months out of the year. It has to do with the flu immunization. So we look at it during the flu season that's been designated by these organizations, and it's October 1st through March 31st. So every time a patient comes in during that timeline, every time we have to ask them, have you had your flu shot this season? Yes or no? That's one of the elements. If they say yes, we put down the date, and that's wonderful. On we go. If they say no, then the next question that goes down in that is, would you like a flu shot this season while you're here at the hospital? And they'll say yes or no. If they say no, okay, we're done. If they say yes, we continue on and say, all right, now we have to give them that flu shot, okay? So it's not too many elements in there, but again, that's a little bit different because it's only for 6 months out of the year. And just as we get into swing of things, it's time to stop. And just when we get into, cool, we don't have to immunizations anymore, it's time to start again. One of the longest ones we have to do has to do with sepsis. And sepsis is also one of the newest ones. That was put into place nationwide in October of 2015. And this has, at last count, something 60 plus elements we have to look at in the chart. So I go through there and I have to answer all those questions and find out the answers in the chart. So one of the things that's very interesting is the sepsis. Do you know what sepsis is?
Yes, it's a bacterial infection in your blood.
That's right. And well, actually, sepsis can be caused by viral too, but we're also talking mostly about bacterial. And what we're looking for in this measure is bacterial infections. And it can start from anything. It can start from a urinary tract infection. It can start from an upper respiratory infection like pneumonia. It can start from a paper cut. Anything that can cause an infection can become widespread and become septic in the body. And we're looking at a whole spectrum of things. We have infection, we have sepsis, we have severe sepsis, we have septic shock, which can lead to death. So sepsis worldwide causes a lot of deaths. 25 to 50% of all mortality is from sepsis when we look at it. So in our country, we're closer to the 30% mark. And so when we started this particular measure in October 2015, you have to know where you start, right? So you know where you finish. So we did some numbers. And our mortality rate here at Memorial Hospital for patients with sepsis was like 15.7%. Still way below the national average, right? So we had to do this measure. We put in protocols that were put in for this measure. We have 3-hour bundles and 6-hour bundles that nursing and lab and the doctors have to do. So in October of 2016, we ran those numbers again. And our mortality rate had dropped down to less than 2%. It's like 1.56%. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
So some of these things work really well. Now, other people say we're not a tertiary care facility, so we transfer all our sick patients. And we do transfer a lot of patients because we don't have all the services here. So our mortality rate for those patients we transferred was almost the same as those we kept here. It was like 14-point-something%. So after a year, we ran those numbers again, and the mortality rate for those patients had dropped to 8%. So we do a lot of things right here. We really do. And that's everybody has to contribute to that. You know, we talked about nurses and doctors and lab following certain protocols. But, so does housekeeping fall into that to make sure everything is done right? We have to make sure we have our clean linen. We have to make sure the patient gets the right nutrition. Maintenance has to come in there to make sure everything's working right. So again, we all contribute to that success. So we've done really well. Some of these things also have a timing on them. So for example, with the immunization one, during the whole hospitalization, we can ask those questions about their flu shot at any time during their stay. And we can give them the flu shot at any time during their stay. Other things have a much more narrow timeline. For example, aspirin on arrival. You can't give that 3 days later, and it's not aspirin on arrival. So we have different elements, we have different timing, depending on what's going on with these particular measures. The other things we look at are hospital-acquired infections, or they're also called hospital-acquired conditions, HACs. And again, we've done really well with that. So for 2013, 14, and 2015, we had a 0 infection rate for ventilator-associated events, urinary catheter infections, central line infections in ICU. So that's very good. So now nationwide, they've expanded that measure to every place in the hospital, so all inpatients, not just ICU patients, although the ventilators here are always in ICU. So we're still doing really well with that. So we do a lot of things right here. And again, that's a whole team doing all that to make sure everything works correctly. That's so important. So we do a lot of things right here. So there's some of your quality initiatives, and again, doing things right, doing things well, that can help so many different levels. So quality can change the delivery of care. It can reduce readmission rates. So if someone comes in here and they don't get sicker, they don't get an infection that's acquired here. Remember, we just talked about hospital-acquired infections or conditions. Fall reductions, mortality reduction. We just said, look what happened with sepsis. We treat our sepsis patients well, we have less mortality. So all that quality really impacts the delivery of our care and the outcomes for our patients. One of the things we've discovered, not just here, but all over in doing quality work, is that we find that it's not usually the individual that has an issue with quality. It's usually systems or barriers we've put up that makes it hard to do some of the things right. So what we want to do is improve our processes so that harm is hard. We want to make it hard to do the wrong thing. I'm going to tell you a little story. So you may be familiar with the actor Dennis Quaid. Well, many years ago, 5 years ago now, he and his wife had twins. And they came early, as twins usually do, and they were in a neonatal intensive care unit. So I was watching this on the news. I wasn't here at the time. And they were saying these little babies got adult doses of heparin. Now, heparin prevents clotting of the blood, and it's needed in some cases. But it comes in all different kinds of doses, different concentrations. So these little itty-bitty babies got an adult dose of this very, very complicated and potentially dangerous drug. So I'm sitting at home watching this on the news, and I'm saying, why would they have an adult dose of anything in a neonatal intensive care unit? I mean, those babies don't even wear regular-sized diapers, for heaven's sakes. And so this was interesting, and I kind of followed it, and there was a lawsuit, no surprise, but this particular lawsuit involved not just the hospital. So they were looking at all the systems. So they looked at that and said, just like I did, why do you have adult doses of this medication or anything in a neonatal intensive care unit? Get them out. Okay, so that's one system improvement. They also went back to the manufacturer, because this particular manufacturer labeled all their concentrations of heparin the same way. And heparin can come in all different concentrations. So they all look the same. They said, why don't you make them in different color boxes or something, put different labels on them, so that this particular concentration looked different from the next one and the next one and so on. So I thought that was very interesting. So they went all the way back and looked at all that to look at all the systems. Again, making it hard to do the wrong thing. Making sure that doing any kind of harm is hard. So it might have been individual there, but there's also lots of system issues that contributed to that. Okay. So years ago when I started, we got reimbursed in the healthcare industry based on volume. Now it's based on value, which also has to do with quality. So years ago, if you did 10 appendectomies and they cost $100 each, don't you wish?
Yeah, right.
We got reimbursed for that. And the key here is reimbursed. There's no other industry I can think of where you have to provide the product or the service and then you have to wait to get paid. You don't go in the grocery store and say, let me have my eggs and bread and milk and I'll pay you in a year or so. Thanks. Doesn't happen that way, right? You can't even get gas now without paying ahead because people would drive off, right? So anyway, nowadays, we're looking at the quality of care, not just the quantity. So let's go back to those 10 appendectomies. And let's say 9 of them were just fine and dandy, neato peachy keen, nothing happened, that shouldn't have happened. But that 10th one maybe got an infection and had to stay in the hospital longer. So instead of costing $100, that appendectomy cost $200. Well, now they come back and say, you didn't meet the quality of care, so we're not paying you what you put out for that care. The quality wasn't there, so we're not going to pay you the $200 that you put out there. We've determined that this, whatever that is, will be how much we pay you. And that's important. It's terribly important that we do all our documentation, that we get reimbursed for every penny we're entitled to, because we can't keep up with things if we don't. We don't use the same kind of machinery or techniques or anything that they used 39 years ago when I first started. They just don't. We don't have the same meds. We don't have the same kind of facility. We don't pay the same kind of salaries. It's very, very important that we do everything we're supposed to do for the care of the patient, that we document everything we do accurately and thoroughly and timely, so that, again, we get every penny of reimbursement that we're entitled to. It's not fraud. It's nothing like that. In fact, most of the time, even when they do reimburse, they don't reimburse 100% what it costs, even if everything does come out great. That's the name of this game. Some of the other things we look at is, again, quality and the documentation and things I look at and the other folks in the department impact different kinds of reimbursement programs. One of the programs is the value-based purchasing program, and these are some of the areas that they look at. Please notice clinical care is only 25% of that. One of the things that we're going to look at real quick is the patient and caregiver-centered experience of care. They've just recently changed that name, so a little shorter now, which is nice. But what that has to do is with HCAHPS. And HCAHPS is a survey that's done with patients after they leave the hospital. We have an outside agency conduct that survey, which most hospitals do, to ensure that it's all statistically well. But these are a lot of subjective questions. These are the domains that they ask questions on. So they're going to talk about how is your communication with nurses. I understand it's about now 80 questions total that they ask the folks. So communication with your doctor, staff responsiveness, cleanliness and quietness of hospital. And if somebody says, well, they never emptied my trash once the whole time I was in there, that's what they're telling them, whether it's true or not, right? And that cart that they brought up every night at 2 in the morning squeaked like crazy. The nurses never talked to me about this. The nurses never responded to the call light, or they took too long, or whatever it is. Or everything was wonderful. But that's very subjective. But does impact our purchasing programs, which is part of our reimbursement program. So you have to be aware, too, that a lot of these things are not just objective data and things I can find in the chart, but they're also getting some information from other sources. In this case, from the patients when they survey them after they go home. So, in spite of the fact that we do a lot of things well here, there's always opportunities for improvement, OFIs. And when we do have an opportunity for improvement, we have a special process we use. We happen to use the PDSA Plan. It stands for Plan, Do, Study, Act. And this is what we put into place when we want to improve some kind of process. We do this all the time on our own without even thinking about it. So, for example, I like to cook. I like to bake. I like to eat when I cook and bake. That's pretty obvious. So I'm going to plan to make some cookies. So I get out my recipe and I get all my ingredients together. And then I do it. I make the cookies. Now I have to study the cookies, which in this case means I have to taste the cookies. And so A stands for act, but I always like it also to say assess. I say, oh, these are pretty good cookies, pretty good recipe, but it would be better if I added chocolate chips. My cookbooks are filled with all these sticky notes and all these notes all over it. So I'll put a sticky note in there and say, I'm going to make this again with the change I made in the recipe, a little tweak. So I'm going to do it again. I will plan to make the recipe with the changes I made. So I gather all the ingredients, I do it, I make the cookies, and I study the cookies again. And this time, they're perfect. So now my PDSA cycle is complete. I have done a process of improvement for the best cookies possible. And so that's complete. And then we can move on to another project. So it's not very complicated. And again, we do it all the time in our daily lives. We just don't think about breaking it down to the cycle like that. I'll give you another example, especially going on here, all the construction that's going on in town, right? I plan to go to work one way, and I get there and the street's blocked off. So I plan to do that, and now I do it, and I get there, and I'm sitting in this barrier thinking, study, how do I get to work this way? Which way should I go? And then I go ahead and change it. So then I come home at night, right? And it's going to be, oh, that street's blocked off, so I plan to go another way. I get there, found out they blocked off the other street. I have to yet find another way home. So we do it all the time. We just don't break it down into these four different sections formally. So what is your role in quality? You're responsible for aiding in the problem-solving process because you're going to see things all the time. You all are out there, and that's important. So if you see things that can be improved, you need to bring them forward. Bring them to your supervisor. So everyone is responsible for recognizing opportunities for the care we provide, the processes, and so on. Any questions? See, I always say I like to think I'm just that good, but you've been sitting here all day, and you're like, don't ask any questions. I want to go home. Okay.
What if we offer some ideas and they're kind of met with a brick wall? Like they don't like my idea, or they don't think that it would work, but I feel with my previous experience that it would. What's the process if something is stonewalled?
Well, I think you can break it down into more steps, just like we do with PDSA. What exactly about this suggestion won't work? Is it a physical issue? Is it something with the software? That's a big issue. I deal with that all the time. And so we have lots of software that doesn't talk to each other or doesn't give complete information, that sort of thing. So I guess I would find out exactly what the concern is or the problem or whatever word you want to use as to why that doesn't work. And then so is there some way within the confines of that? It could be financial. It could be, again, within the systems we have. It could be within the physical facility. Who knows? And find out if there's any way to work around that. Because sometimes there isn't a way to implement a certain idea because you have these other barriers in place. But I would pursue that and try to find out the specifics and then see, can we implement part of it? Or can we work around this? Or it will work if we do this. Has anyone thought of that sort of thing? And if you bring it forward, someone else might say, well, we can't do it that way, but I bet we could do it this way or something. So I would still continue to pursue it. If your particular way won't work, but we're still at an end target here, maybe it's to reduce the waiting time of the patients waiting for medical imaging. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, your particular suggestion won't work, but the idea of reducing the wait time is a good one. How else can we work on that? Because you've already identified there's an opportunity for improvement. And so that's what I would do.
Oh, okay.
So there's lots of ways to work around that. Alrighty, I'm going to move on to the next part of my presentation now. So you thought you were getting off easy, but you're not. So what I need to do is go ahead and turn your computers and bring it up to the intranet page.